Hey guys, this is Blake, and unfortunately a few days ago I heard that Simon MacCorkindale, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, had passed away. This actually really depressed me. I don't think I'd been this depressed from an actor dying since, I don't know, Roy Scheider. Or even Heath Ledger, because at least Roy Scheider, he was much older. And I want to stress that I'm not, the most familiar with his work, but he did actually do a movie that I always hold close to my heart, Jaws 3. Now, another thing he actually did that was actually pretty fun, too, is Manimal, a TV show that has gotten a real big cult following since it flopped on the air. But even though I like this show, I'm not familiar with it enough that I want to do a review of it. So I figured I'd stick with my own territory and review Jaws 3. Now, as I've always made a point of, I'm a huge Jaws fan. I have the poster. I think the first movie is my favorite movie of all time. Actually, I know it's my favorite movie of all time. It's, in my opinion, the best movie of all time. That represents all that I want in a movie. Well, if it had zombies and kung fu naked ninja chicks, then it would have been better. But you can't have everything, can you? But unfortunately, it's been condemned by a lot of crappy sequels. Jaws 2 isn't a bad movie, but it is extremely mediocre. Unfortunately, it never really rises above that mediocrity. It's just constantly at not bad or good. Whereas Jaws 3, I think, is the more complex of the movies, because on one hand, I actually think that it reaches pretty high and actually has some really good stuff. On the other hand, it has some really bad stuff. It's nowhere near the train wreck that Jaws the Revenge is, and what a lovable train wreck that is. But it's certainly an interesting movie all around to consider. And like I said, I'm a huge Jaws fan to the point that I actually love all of these movies. Jaws the Revenge, fun times, as bad as it is. And Jaws 3, I think, is wonderful in all its 2-star glory. It's just always been weird to me that Jaws 2 has been sort of the I don't really care about it out of all the sequels when it's considered the best, and it technically is, but honestly, I'm probably one of the few people who'd rather watch Jaws 5, Cruel Jaws from Bruno Bataille than watch Jaws 2 right now. And I love that too in its own way. But like I said, Jaws 3 actually I think is in a way one of the more underrated movies of the 80s. It's not good, but I think it has some really good stuff. But it's weird because for every good thing, there's a bad thing. For every awful special effect, like the shark running into a gate and it's like its whole body sort of buckling into its head, revealing that it's a very fake robotic shark, obviously really bad. On the good side, when you see the giant shark head at the end, its gums are really kind of moving around, like the teeth are sort of retracting, and that looks pretty realistic. Unfortunately, people tend to remember the bad stuff, like this horrible 3D effect of the shark coming toward the glass. Probably the worst 3D effect that I've ever seen in my entire life. But at the same time, most of the 3D didn't really bug me. It's always a gimmick, but I always thought that would have been a fun movie to watch in 3D. Because at least most of the 3D is relevant to the proceedings in its own way, like a fish head floating toward the screen, whereas like Friday the 13th 3D wastes it on like yo-yos coming at the camera. Lame. But of course, I always thought that the biggest mistake that movie made was having Dennis Quaid as its lead. Dennis Quaid's not a bad actor, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against him, I just thought that the character in itself was boring and Quaid failed to make the character interesting. And the same can be said for whoever the leading lady was. I wasn't all that interested in watching them, but at the same time, I was pretty interested in watching the supporting characters, like whoever played Sean. I thought did really well, and Simon. I thought he was great. I thought he should have been the main character, sort of like how Hugo Weaving should have been the main character of The Wolfmen. It's not that the main character does bad, but they just seem so much more interesting. And what I liked about Simon's character, Philip Fitzroyce, I believe his name was that he's actually a fairly complicated character compared to what you'd usually see in those types of movies. After a Quint from Jaws, like for example, Great White, which is sometimes considered Jaws 3 in other parts of the country, you had like these one-dimensional Quint wannabes. But in the case of Philip Fitzroyce, he's like this young, hotshot kind of guy. He has nothing against sharks, but he always, he's the type of guy who shows off. He does these daring stunts that you know it's going to get him killed one day. But if they remade this movie, they would have made him a complete asshole. Because movies these days don't like those kinds of characters. But here, I mean, he's cocky, and he's obviously very reckless, but at the same time, he also has a heroic streak. And actually, he's turned out to, I thought, be one of the more likable characters. And when he dies in the movie, so yeah, I'm spoiling it, but you kind of see that coming, I actually felt really bad every time I watch it. His death always gets to me. And it also helps that I think he has the best death scene in the whole movie. He's trying to get away from the shark, and somehow he ends up getting trapped in the shark's mouth. And the shark's trying to bite him, but he's in the mouth. And he's trying to get out, and at one point he pulls out a grenade. I'm not sure what he was going to do with that, unless he was planning on committing suicide. But, and it always confused people because he suddenly, implodes or something. You just see blood suddenly fill the whole screen. And everybody was all confused about it. But I always thought it was obvious. Earlier in the film, he actually explains that the problem with shark attacks is that their jaws are so strong. It's not the teeth, it's their bite that matters. And he's explaining it to the main girl when she puts on this armor. And I always just presumed that he got crushed within its mouth. What's causing the blood? I don't know. I think that it's possible that when he was crushed, blood came out of his mouth and mass. You know, it's a horror movie. Nobody really pays attention to the schematics and that kind of stuff. But I always thought that was obvious. And what always freaked me out about that scene, besides the fact that I actually liked the character, is that I'm really claustrophobic. And just the idea of being trapped in the shark's mouth would be so terrifying to me. And it's not like he dies instantly. He's struggling, trying to get out or something. But, I mean, what are you going to do? When you get out, it's just going to rip you in half. So I just thought that's a real terrifying situation. And I thought, that's where I thought Jaws 3 actually succeeded. I always thought it did a good job at making these terrifying situations. Like when people are trapped in that underwater tunnel type thing. And not only are they trapped there, but it's slowly flooding and sharks are out there waiting to eat you. That's a terrifying situation, and the movie, I thought, played that up really well. It's when it finally goes crazy and attacks SeaWorld en masse at the end, really well done sequence. But the rest of the movie, it just like the main characters are too bland, and it has too many lame special effects. So people always remember that aspect. But I always liked it, and I thought Simon MacCorkindale was great in that, and I think he should have been the main character. He made this character really likable, very charming, and I'd be much more interested in watching him as the lead instead of boring-ass Dennis Quaid. So I just want you all to know that I'm really upset about this, and I think you should all watch Manimal or Jaws 3 or any Simon MacCorkindale feature you can get your hands on, because he really was an underrated and talented guy. And I really enjoyed his work. And I really enjoy Jaws 3. I'm one of the 3 people I think are 2. So that's it. I'll see you later.